And welcome to the Good Day Matrix. My name is Daz and I have the absolute honour and privilege today of being here with Brooke Neal in her recently renovated beautiful home. It's a shame you can't see it all. Brooke is a wellbeing and mindset coach. She is an advocate for athletes, for women in business and for budding athletes who are coming through in their journeys. She's an Olympian, she's a Commonwealth Games gold medalist and a qualified yoga instructor. She's the founder of All About Balance, where she brings her experience from high-performance sport into the forefront of well-being, into every conversation that she's having with athletes to try and ensure that well-being is top of mind and something that is really valued, which I just think is so valuable and so critical, both for athletes but for everybody who, everybody in business and life really, that just need to make sure they're taking care of themselves before they worry about everything else that's going on. So Thank you so much for having us here today.
Thank you, welcome.
Thank you. So at the Good Day Matrix, we talk about well-being within 5 pillars, body, mind, identity, community and environment. And we feel that we nail out body and mind pretty well, but we often forget about the others and how interlinked all of those things are for us to really live well and thrive. So we'll go through those pillars today with you. We'll chat a bit about them. So we'll start with body, which, is where we at the top of our table. So you're a force and undoubtedly an absolute force on a hockey field, and you've been so great in terms of advocating for yourself but also for athletes around New Zealand to really make a change and find ways to take care of themselves. In recent times, you've also been dealing with quite a few transitions that are going on. So you've retired, you are soon to be a mum, or you are a mum, soon to be on the other side of that. And you've also been trying to take care of your body and restore it from what's gone on. So sort of talk to us about how you've been managing those transitions for your body and all the changes that have come.
Oh, it's been extremely difficult. I don't think anyone can prepare you for the transition that in every area of your life you change, but for your body, like for me, for so many years, I was in the national team for 9 years. And during that time, your body is your machine. It is your way that you can, keep getting the results. And so you're trying to look after it as best as possible, but at the same time, you're pushing it to its absolute limits. And I learned the hard way that you can't keep going and keep pushing and ignore the signals that your body is sending you. And that's what led me on this wellbeing journey, which we can get into. But for me, having my body aching every single day and having to rest and recover and repeat, we didn't have a choice as to the amount of training, the hours, the intensity. It was all mapped out for us for 9 years. And then all of a sudden to retire in the middle of, at the start of COVID in 2020, I had put my back out. So I was trying to recover from that alongside figuring out, how do you exercise after you've just been at that insane level for so long? Because nothing that I ever did for the first while before I got my mind around it was ever good enough, because if you're not running 10 kilometers and falling on the ground after a session, my body didn't feel like it had been worked enough. So that was really hard, because I see a psychologist now, which I'm so grateful for, and one of the biggest things that we've worked on is the fact that a walk is exercise. Walking my dog is exercise, and moving my body in other ways is cleaning the house. Like I never ever would have thought in my mind that was exercise. And so we came out with a better word for it, which is movement. And I've been working really hard since I retired to find ways that I enjoy moving my body that I actually enjoy, rather than feeling like it's a torture session. So that's probably the main difference.
And it's the necessary evil. Some people say, like, I go to the gym, it's the necessary evil. I'm like, it's not necessary. Like, there's other stuff you could find that you actually enjoy doing rather than you've got to drag yourself there. I don't want to do it. So how do you prioritise moving your body now?
So as you said, like becoming pregnant, that was a massive, again, like learning curve, because I felt like I just got on top of my routine with the things that I enjoyed doing, and then all of a sudden I was quite sick for a while, and so just getting back on top of things now. I think the way that I prioritise it is to try and do it first thing in the morning, because otherwise I just think about it all day, and my brain doesn't operate as well when I haven't felt that little bit of exertion, and so I'll feel a little bbit lazy or tired during the day, and often will not end up doing it. So doing it in the morning, and then for me, being in a team sport for so long, I have struggled to do things by myself, and so I'll still do a lot of stuff by myself, but there's ways around that. So I've joined an online workout for pregnant mums, and that's been great because you're told what to do. It's like a class environment where you don't have to invent the exercises or the activities, because that's where I used to get caught out, was making stuff up and then like mucking around, and you don't often feel like you quite nail it. So having someone to tell me what to do, because I'm so used to a coach, and then as much as I can getting out and doing like yoga classes, Pilates, and even just like walking around the lake with a friend. Nice. Trying to connect with people as well.
Makes a big difference. That's what we've talked about for years, is that accountability. Like it's winning the day when they say working out in the morning, but it doesn't fit for all of us, right?
No,
but
of course.
At the same time, if you know someone's gonna say to you at the end of the day, so what'd you do today? And you're like, nothing. It doesn't feel good, like, because we're on the same team sport, so like you don't want to let anybody down. So if you've got that little bit of accountability, someone holding you accountable to do it, then it's more. And I'm competitive too, so I don't like letting myself down, letting other people. But so we'll move into mine. So when we caught up, you talked about sort of a pretty pivotal moment in 2013 and where you made some pretty big shifts. So talk us through that and talk about sort of what support was put in place around that time to support your mind.
Yeah, well, I guess up until then, to give you a little bit of context, I was the classic overachiever, people pleaser. Yes, how high do you want me to jump? I'll just go through any ring that you tell me to. And in 2013, it was my first year into the Black Sticks, which was meant to be obviously like dream come true. And it was such a privilege, and it was so exciting. But at the same time, my body, my mind, it was almost like you're thrown into a washing machine, like very high pressure, don't know which way's up. I was constantly doubting myself, and then I had a pretty hard injury. I tore most of my ligaments in my ankle when I was overseas on my first tour.
Oh no.
And then I got home. I came home early because of that, and I learned that my best friend Caitlin had passed away from cancer, and she was 21 years old and I was 21. And having that significant loss at that age, it's not something that anyone talks about or prepares you for. I didn't even know what the grieving process was, and then partner on top of that, having to go back and like join the high performing environment. It was just a lot for me to take on at that age, and so I did what like most 21s would probably do in that scenario. And I just pushed everything down and just kept going.
Yep.
And being the overachiever, I just thought if I train more, if I push my body, if I do everything that the coach asks of me, everything that the trainer asks of me, then I will be successful. And so I was so strict on my nutrition. I was so strict on the amount of reps that I do, and journaling and like game analysis. And it's interesting because I was doing everything that they tell you to do, and I think that whole hustle mindset is quite toxic sometimes. And so I was thinking I was ticking all the boxes, and it was so funny. Well, it's not funny, but at one stage I became really obsessed that I wanted to get a six-pack like a lot of girls in the team, and I actually got one. And because I was, it was not healthy what I was doing, but I had the six-pack for the first time in my life, and I was training the hardest I ever had in my life, And as a consequence, I was completely burnt out, and I was getting worse as a hockey player, which I was confused about because I assumed 1 + 1 = 2.
Yep.
Tick, tick, tick.
Yep.
Why aren't I getting better? And so it was this massive realization that ended up with me having this complete meltdown of asking myself the question, like, I have to quit because I cannot handle this and my body can't handle it. Or if I keep going, something has to give, something has to change. And so luckily I made that decision one night when I was just an absolute mess. And I decided to keep going, but I almost gave myself that ultimatum. It was like, I have to figure out what's going on in my mind. I have to figure out how to sustain this performance and find a healthier way. And so that began my journey of wellbeing, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to call it, but it was just this pivotal moment for me where I realized, like, yes, I could keep trying to push myself, but at what cost?
Yep.
And I'd already paid quite a high price at that stage. And I was 21, so retiring at the age of 21, unfortunately, you see it more and more, these athletes that are thrown into those environments and they can't handle it and they don't have the tools to handle it. And so I guess that's that moment that you were mentioning in 2013.
Yeah, that's massive. It's massive. And it's the derailing, like I often, when I talk about sports people, because I've obviously been on the netball side of things, and I get upset, like, of the blockers that kids face as they come through the rings, of like the money that needs to be invested to be able to do these things. But I also forget that we're not all equipped to handle different pressure situations, and it's those things that we actually need to be taught young, like, what does change feel like? How do we manage ourselves? What does transition feel like? What does pressure situations feel like? Because it's all good if you've got this natural talent and then you get there, but if you've never had structure or, had to show up and do certain things at certain times or juggle work or study and, like all of those things, if you don't have the coping skills that are sitting there from when you're young, it's all well and good to get there, but it's really, really hard to try and manage yourself appropriately in there and care for yourself. And like you said, I'm doing all the right things. I'm doing everything. Like, what else? What am I doing wrong? And
it's interesting that we started with body, and you say everyone puts such an emphasis on the physical, because it's exactly right. Like, when you talk about performing at a high level, often it's the physical stuff that you can measure. So GPS tracking, reps in the gym, amount of kilometers that you could, fitness testing, it's all easily measurable, and so we focus on that. And where I was really interested in was the mind, because that was clearly what was causing a lot of pain and suffering for me. But at that stage, we didn't have a lot of information around, even, for example, mindfulness meditation. I managed to find a podcast that linked to a new app called Headspace back in those days.
In the day.
And that really, like, changed my trajectory of treating my mind and my mind training sessions just like training sessions, and put as much emphasis and importance in ticking those off than the physical ones.
Yeah.
And it was 10 minutes a day, and I did it for 3 years straight, from 2013 until the Rio Olympics. And 10 minutes a day of mind training versus 2 to 3 hours a day of physical training, that was the difference for me on how I got from, like, this bench warmer, completely melted down, broken athlete, to like a consistent performing black stick in the team, where I was able to step up under pressure and go to those big tournaments and actually, like, not freak out and panic, like you were saying, and perform under pressure. But it was interesting that that change of treating my mind as if it was a muscle and trying to strengthen it and train it. Back in 2013, like, a lot of people didn't know or weren't practicing meditation. And I remember this funny period of being overseas touring with the team, and I had to do it. It was like something that I just needed to do every day at that stage. And my teammates and my roommates, like, I was too scared to tell them what I was doing. And so often on the way to games in the bus, I would put my headphones in and close my eyes, and lots of people thought that I was sleeping on the way to games, and I didn't have the heart to, I'd rather them thought that I was sleeping than to have to answer questions about what I was doing. But my coach asked me what the change had been, because he noticed it almost within a few months of practicing mindfulness, and I told him, and he just said, whatever you're doing, keep it up, because it's working. So that gave me really good confidence to keep doing that, but it's frustrating still, the amount of attention we give our bodies versus our brains. Yeah.
And it's that, like, what people place value on, right? Tangible and intangible, like qualitative and quantitative. Like, it's not measurable, so they're kind of like, oh, well, there's no point in focusing on it, we can't measure it. Well, you can. Because if your coach can notably see a marked difference, like, that's measurable. That's stuff that, that's so important.
Yeah.
So important. So we'll move on to identity. And so knowing who you are and where you've come from, we can't place a higher importance on. It's like, again, when you come back into those pressure situations or change, or when you're developing relationships, there are things you've learned from where you've come from and the people who you've been surrounded by that come through in those things. And it's really good to understand, like, why you react to different things in different ways, and you can sort of pick that up. So tell us a bit about your whānau, and in particular, there's a generational situation here with hockey as well. But tell us about your
So I was born and raised in Whangarei, and my parents, Leonie and Mark, were very supportive of anything that we wanted to try growing up in terms of sport, but anything in life really. And so my older brother Shay and I, we tried everything, but we lived a kilometre away from the hockey turf, and so I think that was maybe a reason why we kept going back to hockey, but also it was generational, funnily enough, on both sides of the family. So my mum's side, it was like my nana, my great grandma and granddad, and then my dad's mum was actually the CEO of Northland Hockey. So when we were growing up, she would just be always in the office, and we had lots of my grandparents on both sides coming to watch our games growing up. So it was quite a family affair. My mum and dad also played, and my dad coached my team sort of right through to the under 18s stage, and my mum was like the manager, or she was always involved somehow. And then my brother Shay we both ended up going to the Rio Olympics together, so we both had that high drive of wanting to get to that next level. And that was our hockey experience growing up. But aside from that, I think growing up in a smallish town, we were things were pretty simple, and we'd always go to the beach for holidays, and it wasn't until I moved down to Waikato Uni that I really had my first change of small townness, I guess. So growing up like that, I mean, we had such a good upbringing, and it was some fun times.
That's so cool. How did you find that transition of coming from sort of the smaller town and then coming into Waikato Uni? What is that like as a young person coming through and sort of having to develop relationships and sort of come away from a really strong hub that you've got at home?
It was, challenging. I think the main thing was I was flatting for the first time, and I didn't have a lot of cooking experience, so that was something that I had to work on. But apart from that, I absolutely loved it. I loved Waikato and the environment that they created around hockey down here. I actually met my husband, so he when I was 16 or 17, and then we started dating when I first moved to university, and we were both here, and he was in the halls, and I was flatting, so that was way back when, maybe so 12 years ago. So it's it was a good transition for me. I enjoyed being away from a small town, but also that whole uni lifestyle too.
That is so good. I love stories like that. So when we caught up as well, you spoke that sort of hockey has been an identity of yours for a really long time, and then obviously with the transitions and change, how that identity has had to shift and sort of find a new meaning for you, or understand these other things. So tell us about that. Tell us about that sort of mind shift of not just hockey. Yeah, well,
back in 2013, I think I attached myself quite strongly to labels growing up. Like I was head girl at school, and I was so proud of that. and I made the New Zealand under-18s, and so I would often always sort of like attach to certain things. And when I made the black sticks and decided to commit myself to the sport, I very much lost touch with the other identities that I had in my life, and that was part of the reason why I struggled so much mentally, was because my relationships weren't great. I wasn't nourishing them, and I didn't have a lot of, apart from I had a part-time marketing job, I didn't have a passion outside of hockey that I was really going for. And so that was when I had to look at my whole identity and think, like, I can't just be a hockey player. I have to figure out, what am I doing outside of my hockey? And that was when my business was born, after the 2016 post-Olympic sort of blues time. So when that happened, I started to think of myself as more than a hockey player. Of course, it's going to be still a massive, massive part of my life for 9 years. And so luckily I was able to build my business and have that passion outside, so that when I retired, at least I wasn't stuck with I have nothing. I did all the work that I possibly could to prep myself for that transition, because I knew it was coming. But even with all of the work on identity and who am I outside of sport, when it's taken away from you, it leaves a big hole. But I did enjoy having conversations with people that wasn't like, when's your next tour, and how's training going, and what injuries have you got? And so I was enjoying that, and whenever I'd go and meet new people or network, or it was always like, oh, so what do you do? And the first time someone asked me that after I retired, I was like, because you sort of have the the role, you have it ready to go. And so I'm retired, and I mean, obviously I have my business, and I stumbled through it, and then I had to sit down and be like, okay, so who am I now? Obviously I've had to do that again since retiring with becoming pregnant, because it's no longer just about me. And so identities have shifted a lot over the last few years, but I've definitely realised that, like, it's hockey is a part of what I did, but it wasn't who I was. And that's the same with anything that I do. And so I like to just keep open, and when I'm talking to people, I'm not necessarily trying to put myself in a little box. With my business, I'm going different directions all the time, and so I don't like to say this is who I am and this is the one thing. Because I do so many things, so that's sort of the journey I've been on.
We talk about that a lot of, like, we come through school and you try every sport and you try every subject and you learn a bit of French, you learn a bit of Te Reo, and like, you do all this stuff, so you're everything, and you play with Barbie dolls and you ride your bike, and you do all of this stuff, and then slowly but surely everything starts to funnel, and then I'm a netball player, or I'm a teacher, and that's the only thing we define ourselves by. But we can be so much stuff, and then work is not us. And it's a really, really big mind shift to then be able to go, actually I do lots of things. I play the guitar, and I'm a mum, and I'm this and I'm that, but and I can accept that I'm all of these things, because also New Zealanders are tall poppies, right? So we don't like to say too much about ourselves, and people are like, oh, did she spend 15 minutes just talking about all the things she does?
Totally.
It's so funny. So we'll move into community, and so you've moved around, with your sport and moving away from home. And when we talk about communities, we talk about everything. So that can be knitting groups, it can be rugby clubs, it can be everything in between, because we build communities wherever we are. But you've chosen to settle down here in Hamilton, and you're away from your whānau, from where you guys come from. But how have you connected into different communities as you've moved around, and then what sort of made you settle here in Hamilton?
Well, it's sort of like the fitness and the exercise. I didn't have to think about my community playing hockey. You're with your best friends every day. For 200 days a year you're travelling, and then if you're not travelling, you're training at home. So you just don't have to think about those relationships. It's like when you're at school, you take them for granted. And so my community was very hockey focused, and I look back at pictures of our wedding, and Cam's obviously a hockey player as well. And it's one of the coolest things that hockey has given us, is these amazing, incredible friendships, because so many of, you know, even if it's not directly through hockey, it's because of hockey that we've met people. And so we have a very strong community based around this common thing that we enjoy. And so having that for so long and seeing those people every day, and then not seeing them and seeing them maybe twice a year, you know, or whenever they're in town, that's been really tricky for me. And it's made me try and reach out to them more often in other ways. But moving down to Hamilton, it was during the second lockdown, and so in a way we felt like we only really started to put our feelers out into the community when that lockdown lifted, which was only like, it was less than a year ago.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been too long that we've started to figure out like our favourite cafes and, you know, finding like yoga studios and things that where you meet like-minded people. And for us, Hamilton, we've got a lot of old connections that we're sort of re-establishing from our uni days as well, and obviously lots changed.
Not going to the Outback.
Yes, exactly. Well, no, definitely not now. But back then, that was where you'd went, right? So so it's been a really big transition, as I said. But one of the things that I am passionate about is if there's no community, if I can not find a community, then I'll try and make one. And obviously you said different groups like knitting and things like that. But for me, one of the biggest ones is retired athletes, and in this area where we've got Cambridge with all the rowers and the cyclists. And I'm pretty lucky to have reached out to a few of those girls who I knew retired around the same time, and so managed to make some new friends, which is great at this age. So that's been great, and just having that common struggles, but also, you know, going through motherhood and things like that is definitely what I'm looking for, is just those things that you can connect over.
And that's the thing, right, as we get into our 30s and next our 40s, but it's harder and harder to make connections because people have their cliques and they almost get defensive, like, I've got too much on, I don't need more people in the, you know, this is our thing. So it's really hard. So it's awesome that you're reaching out to those people, and it's a confidence thing for a lot of people. Like, they probably won't want to be my friend, you know, like, but there's no harm in just reaching out and have a coffee and then see if there's a bit of a, hey, you know, we're on the same page, we should do this again, like, you know, and just start building. But it can be a serious blocker as we get older and feel like we've kind of missed the boat on the connection in that environment. So that's awesome.
Definitely. I feel like confidence wasn't my issue, it was organisation and planning and scheduling, because often you say that we should do this again sometime, and then 3 months go by and you just forget and life goes on. And for me, I worked really hard on, like, you know, trying to establish some of them weekly, some of them monthly, like, let's put it in the calendar so that it's already there. And if we cancel, but at least I don't have to think too much about it. And because often that's where it gets like a hassle, right? It's like, I need to catch up with that person, but I can't be bothered going back and forth 16 times to find, you know, when you can go for a walk. So if you do it like at the end of that last walk, be like, right, when are you free next? I found that really helpful. I haven't nailed it, but
that's
I'm getting there.
That's a great tip. That's an amazing tip, because you know, like, you'll say it like, let's catch up, and then in 6 months you're like, shivers, I haven't even talked to that person in 6 months. Whereas, you know, you love it. It's it's organisation. And that's something that I've had to learn, because as I said, my schedule was so planned out for me. And mind you, I probably did plan my free time a lot better when I was training, because you'd have the odd week off, which was so rare. And now I have a lot more free time, which sometimes actually makes it a bit harder because you've got so much to choose from. Not that I'm complaining. No, but then other people don't at the same time. So like when you're a stay-at-home mum, it's the flips. Your friends are working, so you're kind of like, I'll just fit in with you, and then it does, it doesn't happen at the same time. It's
Yes.
hard going. So we'll move into environment. So in the environment, we talk about all kinds of things. So it can be the environment you create around yourself. It can be sustainability. It can be, your physical environments at home or work. But you obviously have been going through some renos at the moment, and it's not easy, and it's not for the faint-hearted. And I sometimes don't wish it on anyone because it's not easy. But sort of talk to us about how that environment of change and sort of, bits unfinished and things like that, how that's been affecting you.
Well, it's the first time that we've lived in a house that we've owned. And so, throughout when we were living in Auckland, I think I counted we moved flats about 14 or 15 times in that period, because you'd be travelling I was travelling for most of the year, and Cam was working full-time in Auckland, but we were always just trying to make it work, and we never had a base, and that was really, really hard. I'm such a feet on the ground type of person, and I would always try to figure out how to make wherever we were home. But it wasn't until we moved down to Hamilton and we bought this place that we were like, right, this is our chance to create something that we feel like we can really relax and chill and make it our own. But we sort of don't do things half pie here, and so we ended up ripping the whole inside out ourselves and rebuilding the floor plan. So this used to be a garage. I've got photos of like a car driven in here, with like everything's new, windows, everything. To give you an idea of how much we changed it. So for a long time we were house sitting and then coming here on the weekends, but we ended up moving into a caravan on the backyard, and we were unsettled for a long time, living without a kitchen, and jib dust everywhere, and we have a dog as well. So it was a hard time to manage for me, because I work from home and then travel a lot to schools and workplaces. I didn't have that separate zone for me to switch off and really focus. So I pretty much became a full-time builder, and just, like cleaning and doing what I could. And that was really challenging. And I don't think I realised how much that affected me until after the fact, when I got some of my space back. I was like, oh my goodness, I can just sit here and enjoy it. So it's definitely affected my mental well-being quite a lot, but always with the vision of like, this is going to be done someday, and it's just very short term. So now that it's done, I'm very much enjoying like being able to just ground myself and enjoy the space for a little bit before we make another change to the family.
There's a lot to be said though. There's a lot to be said for just being able to settle and know that it's a safe place, whether that's work or home, to be fair. When there's job changes or restructures or every 3 years change, like all those things, they matter to just our mental health so much. And that's where we try and talk about all those interlinking things. Like we think mind is mindfulness and mind is reading books and it's doing all those things, but actually it's how's the environment affecting your mind and the people in your community. So important.
And just touching on environment as well, like home is very important, but also nature for me is really important too. And whenever I was feeling unsettled, I'd drive to Raglan, I would go to the lake, I would go to the bush and do a hike, and for me that would just like reground myself. So that's one of the tools that I always use, because obviously growing up in Whangarei near so many beaches, it's sometimes a little bit challenging in Hamilton, but I do find like taking the dog to the river, for example, just watching the water, it's very relaxing for me. So that's something that I try and get in like at least once a week to my schedule.
That's brilliant. And if you calendar it in, it actually happens, which is fantastic. So we'll move into our last one. So we talk about portion distortion, which is all about time. And I don't think it matters how old you are, where you've come from, what work you do, how many kids you have, if you don't have kids. Like, we all struggle with time and we all have challenges. So talk us through some challenges you have or have had in the past with time, and how you've sort of overcome them, or some strategies you've put in place to manage your time.
Oh, that's a good question. Because of the radical change in my life with hockey and then retiring, it sounds so bad to say, but I had the most free time that I have ever had in the last 2 years. And you'd think that would be like the biggest blessing, but sometimes that structure is just what you need to keep motivated, keep your goals going. And especially with COVID, I'm sure a lot of us felt that because you were at home more, it didn't necessarily mean that you had more chance to do all the things that you were hoping you'd do, like the sourdough and, I'm going to bake. And so you have all these ideas. Banana bread. You have all these ideas and all these best intentions, but often it's the momentum, throughout your life that keeps you going. And so I struggled with the adaptation of being so ridiculously busy to now what? I run my own business, so I can make appointments and I can schedule workshops and events around whatever it is that I choose as the priority. Which was absolutely amazing, and part of the reason why I decided not to work for anyone and to do my own thing was so that I could be the master of my own time. And again, it also came with its challenges, because if I was feeling a little bit off, do I just have a nap? Do I just take the day off? Which I did allow myself for quite a while to give myself that benefit of the doubt, because I had been operating at that high level for so long. And then you address the guilt, right? So it's always feeling guilty, which as a high performing athlete, you're always just naturally going to have ingrained in you. And so time has been this funny thing for me where I thought having more free time would be the answer. And then I think what I've realised is one of the key things that I look at my life now in is seasons. I'm not very good at doing the same thing every day, and I love the variety. And so for me, I have to think what season of my life am I in right now, and not trying to compare that to others. I could easily look at all my teammates who are in Europe right now, traveling the world, competing at that high level. They've just finished the Commonwealth Games and the World Cup. So I could easily do that. And I could easily look at, the young 23-year-old businesswoman who is just crushing it and posting every day on Instagram and looks like they've, absolutely got it all together. And that takes a lot of effort to just accept that that's not where I'm at right now. And so for me, time is all about where am I at? What are my priorities? And that will shift every single day, every single month. And it's been a lot more of a healthy way of looking at my time rather than trying to get the most out of every single hour of the day and, push. That old hustle mindset that I have to keep fighting against.
And this is what I was talking to a friend about the other day. Instagram tells you a 100th of their day, or a 100th of their story. What the grind is like, and that she didn't just get there, by chance, and it's not a quick photo. Here we go again. It's amazing. So we've got to be really, really careful what we absorb when we look at stories and posts and stuff that. There's stuff going on for that person too. They don't share necessarily all the difficulties they're having, or but not to sort of just go on that comparison level of I wish I had everything together like that person. They don't. None of us do, and if they do, well, good luck to them. But at the same time, we don't have to carry that we're doing something wrong. It's it's a pressure that we all carry, and people blame it on social media, but it's not. It's the same when. Before they had that, and you go to work and there was a person who just looked like they had it all together and they were succeeding, and so you still had that want, it's the same stuff but different, but it's just knowing that you're doing all right in here, and it's how you measure your success and what it means for you.
And I think that's why I'm so passionate about doing the work that I do with these young athletes and young people, is they are looking at these athletes with gold medals around their necks, and they don't see all the hard stuff. So when I go and share some of these hard times that I've been through and the things and the struggles that I've been through, it automatically lets their guard down, because they think, she's successful, whatever that is to them, and she's struggled as well, so maybe it's okay to struggle, maybe it's okay to have bad days. And that's been one of my main messages that I try and get through, is the whole shiny, perfect world, you know, just taking some realness to them and being like, well, actually, it's really hard and you're going to fail and you're going to muck up, and that's okay.
And you'll carry pressure, and you'll feel like you owe all of these different people different things,
and I still have no idea what I'm doing. It's like they think now that I've got it all figured out. No,
I think that would be the best message for anyone, though, right? That's just, none of us do. We're just figuring it out as we go along. So how important is it for you to find time to do things that bring you joy?
I mean, what else are you trying to achieve in life if it's not to help make your life a little bit more happy and joyful, right? Easy to forget, easy to not prioritise because you've got washing to do, and you know, add anything else in the to-do list, and that probably gets slipped off the bottom most of the time, just like our meditation, just like our exercise, just like the things that we know are good for us. I think the reason we don't prioritise them is because a lot of us don't see, as I was saying, the measurable effects of that. You can see clean folded laundry, but you know, a lot of the other things you can't necessarily tangibly touch. But for me, I know that if I'm checking in with myself on a weekly basis, I can tell when it slips, and it's often because I'm not doing something that fills my cup. Which is really hard to catch if you're not checking in with yourself weekly, right? And often when I get into those spirals, it's been a couple of weeks or a month before I've actually been like, well, what do I need? So checking in with myself, being like, okay, what can I do this week that's just like going to be fun? And putting it into the schedule. I think that's been a massive thing for me. Often it involves like other people too, catching up with other people and family and friends. But man, it's such a struggle to prioritise it because, especially when you're in the middle of renovations, I'll just put that one thing up. And then half a day goes by and you miss your window. So it's a work on. Yeah,
it was interesting you said like the folded washing is like the measure, because it's so like, once you have baby you'll see what I'm talking about. But my husband would get home and, you know, he's just worked a 10-hour day on this building site, and he'd be like, so what did you do today? And that question used to like hurt my insides, because I'm the productive person. I get lots done. I'm a leader in my job, blah, blah, blah. And I'm a stay-at-home mum, and stuff is everywhere. And I'm like, the baby's alive. Some days, because it was hard and I was sick, and there's, you know, and that's just one little element of like that. That's just life in general, but that's an example of having a baby and doing that. And so I taught Chris to ask me different questions about my day, not like, what did you do today? Because like I took care of him and I took care of myself, and you know, no, dinner's not ready, but you know what, I did all these other things, like we played today and we smiled and we actually enjoyed each other, instead of me just rushing and trying to do something that you'd measure success on. But today, just having a shower and taking care of our son was all I had in the tank. But it's when you can't show it to someone, like, I folded the washing, I've cooked you a dinner, look how clean everything is, that bench is clear. It's so true. I have some quick fire questions for you.
Okay,
here we go.
How quick are we talking?
I'm not allowed to engage with you. I get growled at, because then I start going, yes, that book's great, and I'm not allowed to do that. So you take your time. I won't try and answer back.
Okay.
3 things that made you smile today.
Well, we were away for the weekend, so we didn't have our dog. So getting the dog back, and she came up and gave us cuddles on the bed this morning, was really nice. Doing my meditation this morning, feeling the baby kicking, and I'd say being able to just like invite people into my home and not be like, I'm so sorry, you know, because I was apologizing for so long because we had bats in the walls and things. So now it's like, welcome.
Nice. Well, it's very beautiful. Favorite books?
I'm a big reader. I read a couple of books a month, and just every night. I love it. So I struggle to pick favorites. But if we were to go sort of on the self-help topic, I absolutely love Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
Oh, she's a magician.
She sort of was my go-to during the retirement phase, and I've read it a couple of times since, so I'd highly recommend that. And Man's Search for Meaning, you can't really, like, if you know, that's sort of where I started. It was great. mindful athlete, if anyone's really interested in like the way that your mind works with, being an athlete as well, that's a really good place to start. But then fiction wise, like anything from Kristen Hanna, like I just love adventure stories and learning about history. This is so not a quick fire question.
No, this is good.
But also I'd say like one of my most mind-blowing books is When Breath Becomes Air, by Paul Calenti. I think he was a brain surgeon who died, I don't know if I spoiler alert, but he died of a brain tumour. So like he was a brain surgeon and so he was writing the book as he was going through that process. It's just fascinating.
Wow.
Well, I could go on forever about books.
That's so cool. Glennon Doyle, I love her. I love her and Abby's podcast. It's so good.
It's my favourite thing, and the We Can Do Hard Things song is like my anthem. So.
Yes, I've bought that book for so many of my friends. Yeah, so good. See, it started talking. 3 favourite smells.
Smells. Well, I've just recovered from COVID, so I'm appreciating the smells again. I absolutely love the smell of coffee in the morning. Not that I'm drinking much of it, which is a little bit hard at the moment, but just the smell of coffee. Fresh ground, we have like a really, a machine we smell the beans. Essential oils, just absolutely love, like any essential oils to get me grounded. And then I'd say like that smell of, I don't know if you can explain it, but like the beach, just like camping, the beach, fresh air.
Yep. 2 of those are very common. The coffee and the beach, they're very common. What makes you laugh?
My husband. Yeah, just the classic. Doesn't really think that he's that funny, but everyone like who meets him is like, yeah, he's pretty funny.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
First job.
Paid or
paid? Unpaid?
Just the occasional, like for your parents, you were growing up. So like my dad had a printing business, so I'd often be the folder of the magazines and the things. So like the collating. But then like one of my first proper jobs after that, I did a lot of nannying and things. But to be honest, I always prioritised hockey, and so I would probably like first port of call would be to go out and fundraise and earn my money that way and be like, hey, I'm doing this thing, will you support me? Because the time was like the biggest thing for me to protect. Goodness. So the
things we've done for our sports. We were talking about fundraising the other day for netball. Go to pick me up songs.
Oh my goodness. Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield if I just need like a dance. And then I have this playlist of just like old bangers, which, just the classic like Michael Jackson's and just anything that will make me dance or feel like moving my body. I've got
a playlist I called Mood Booster for that, and it's just all that kind of stuff, and you just know, no matter what's going on, one of them's going to be like, here we go, you're okay. Favourite concert?
I can't go past, it was actually one of my first concerts when I was at high school, Justin Timberlake, and managed to get in the VIP, don't ask how. And
concern.
And was touching he was putting his hand out, I was touching his hand, so I was like, oh my goodness.
Oh, that's
back
so
in the
cool.
stages of like Sexy Back, like he was the person.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. I never got to. Back in those days, my mum and dad wouldn't let me go to concerts, so I didn't get to see any of that, but jealous. Hobbies?
A lot of them now involve the dog, so just like taking her on walks and playing fetch and things. But anything to do with like walking or paddleboarding or the beach, absolutely love that. Going on little adventures. I could also probably safely say like anything to do with finding a good cafe or a restaurant in wherever area that we are, and just having really good food is like a priority. And then the other, I guess, hobby for me that I've taken up since lockdown is crochet.
Okay.
And knitting. I could show you some of my pieces of art. But just love it, like making little toys and blankets for my like friends who are having babies and things. So, it's
cool.
very uncommon for our age group, but it's such a stress reliever too. Yeah, I find it, I just watch it. I do it while I'm watching TV and it makes me feel like I'm doing something instead of just absorbing all the time.
Yeah. What does a recovery day look like for you? So we used to say lazy day, but we don't say that anymore. What's a recovery?
Well, the hard thing about recovery days is, as an athlete, we would call it a rest day. And my psychologist has gotten me to not call them rest days anymore, or recovery days, because technically if I did a little bit often, I would not need a recovery day. Which was quite a mental shift for me. So I often don't think of it as a recovery day, but if I were to have like a dream day of just end of the day, you're like, mate, that was amazing. It would involve like good food, coffee, walking my dog, spending time with my husband, like moving my body. If I could do like a yoga or, oh my gosh, even if I could get a massage or something, that would be great. Obviously this isn't a regular thing.
No. This is why there's special days.
And I'd probably try and catch up with people as well. So a little bit of everything mixed in there.
Beautiful. And qualities you love about yourself?
Oh my goodness. You don't get asked that often, do you?
People get stumped. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I just sit here patiently. I'm like, someone, you're going to say something.
Yeah. I think one of the things I probably respect about myself is the ability to be self-aware, and it's something that I've trained and practiced in through meditation, but also this whole journey of wellbeing that I've been on is being aware of how I am, what I need, how I'm reacting to things, and being able to course correct before things get too far down the line. I'd say self-awareness, and another quality I guess is like possibly being there for my friends and my family, and I often get told I'm the one that is like the constant checker inner, just to touch base with people when life gets too busy and make sure that they're okay as well. I love helping people, and sometimes I can go too far to become that helper, but I'd say like that quality of really caring about the people around me as well.
That's awesome. I'm going to add one to your list, which is willingness to share. Like the stories you're telling through All About Balance, not everyone would talk about, out loud, and know that was for the benefit of so many people. They'd keep those struggles in and be like, it's not embarrassing, but we make ourselves feel shame or embarrassment when we shouldn't, and it's stories that can help so many people. So I think a willingness to share or be honest or vulnerable or transparent, I think that's incredibly important quality that's going to change a lot of lives and change a lot of trajectories early, to understand that it's okay that you're going to have tough days or tough moments. So
I try, that's one of the things that I work really hard on is like being really honest where I'm at and where I've been, and hopefully can encourage others to do the same as a result of that, especially this generation of like athletes who we are out there on the world stage, and it does look perfect a lot of the time. You're seeing it more and more now, people opening up about their struggles. But Glennon Doyle was actually one to say, often we don't speak about those struggles until we're through the other side, and things then look all shiny, because it's like, well, it's good for you to say you've struggled, but now you're okay. And she was a big on opening up about what's the current struggles. It's a fine balance, because you obviously don't want to speak, like you have to have boundaries, but I think that's important as well, is to share both what you've been through, but also like the fact that you still don't have it all together. It looks great, but lift the hood and it's not so shiny at all. Well, thank you so much, Brooke. This has been amazing, and I know that there'll be so much people will be getting out of this. My takeaway is the organised around connecting with people. It's not for lack of trying. It's actually being organised and actually calendaring those things in and just saying, I'm not letting you go until we book the next thing in. That's so important. Or not just saying, let's do this sometime. So do you know what's great too is our age group. You can just send calendar invites and then it's on both of your calendars. Whereas when you were younger, it was like, we're so unorganised. So just treat it like a work meeting.
Commit to it in your own. It's priceless. But thanks so much. There's so much to take away, and it's so important to be having these conversations. So really appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much.
And to everyone out there, we will see you again next time, and let us know what you got out of Brooke's kōrero. Ka kite.